and welcome to Be Verified with me, Mustafa Kedabo. Today is a journalist on another journalist. Today my guest is Dr. Galleh Jallow, a former editor-in-chief and publisher of The Independent. I get that right?
That's right.
Yes, and also a former executive secretary to the TRRC, Truth, Reconciliation and Reparation Commission. Dr. Jallow, welcome to Be Verified.
Thank you, Mohammed. Mustafa.
Interesting. Well, Mohammed and Mustafa.
Mohammed Mustafa, yes.
Let's get to it. I mean, you are a very familiar face in the Gambian media, but also in the Gambian public eye. How did your career into journalism start? Let's begin from there, because also much later you became an activist. You became many things. You became a professor and many other things.
Right.
Let's start with journalism career.
Yes, thank you very much, Mustafa, and thanks for inviting me to this conversation.
Yeah.
My foray into journalism began when I was working as an assistant registrar at WIC. I had graduated from Forever College, the University of Sierra Leone, came back home, got a job at WIC, the West African Exams Council. And then the Observer was started by Mr. Kenneth Best.
Daily Observer.
Daily Observer, you know. Then I started writing short stories because I had a knack for writing short stories, satires mainly. So I wrote short stories for the Weekend Observer. My column was very popular. It was called what was the name of the column again? Story of the Week. Story of the Week. It came out every Friday. And it kind of reflected the hypocrisies. It was a satiric column, you know, laughed at the evil things that were going on.
Mainly political or social or both, or all of them?
Political, social, both. You know, Jammeh was a very favorite character.
Yeah.
Sometimes in the form of a horned individual, sometimes having a tail, a lot of things.
Yeah.
But also, you know, rich men and poor men, just hypocrisy. So I kept writing that column until sometime in 1994, before the coup. It was in early 1994. My boss called me to his office and said, you know, if you don't stop writing for the Observer, then you are going to get sacked from the WIC, from my position as assistant registrar. And I said to him, well, you will have to sack me then, because I do not write about WIC. I do not write at the office. I write at home in my spare time. And my writing has nothing to do with my job at WIC. But he said, well, if you don't stop writing, you're going to get sacked. I said, fine. So I continued running the column for the Daily Observer. Then a Sunday, the Friday after the coup, no, the Sunday after the coup, the coup was on the 22nd of July. Precisely on the 29th of July, I walked into the office and I got my sacking letter. 1 week, exactly 1 week after the coup.
The coup.
So I took the letter and
that could have been because of the changing political climate, maybe. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, I think they took advantage of, you know, the fact that the coup was happening, and so, you know, people's attention was elsewhere. So I was sacked from WIC for writing for the Daily Observer. So I went straight to Kenneth Best at the Independent, at the Daily Observer in Barrow. It was a Sunday. So when I walked in, it was a Friday. So when I walked in there, I said, Mr. Best, I've been sacked from the WIC because of my writing. Because I've been telling him about that. And he wanted me to come over to the Observer. So when I told him, he said, you know, go home and bring me a letter, you know, apply for assistant editor at the Observer, bring it on Sunday and start on Monday. So precisely on the first Monday of August 1994, I started my work at the Daily Observer. That's how I got into.
That's how you got into journalism.
Yes.
It was quite.
Yes.
And then you became an editor right away, or
I became assistant editor. And then I became deputy editor, and then I became editor-in-chief, because the foreign staff were being sacked. At the time I went, Mr. Best was the editor-in-chief, Kenneth Best. Then he was deported, even before the end of 1994. Then Ericot Siet, a Ghanaian, became the editor-in-chief, and I became the deputy editor-in-chief. And then a few months later, sometime in 1995, he also was deported to Ghana. And so I became editor-in-chief.
And I think at this time, Jammeh already bought Exile.
No. It took... It took 3 years.
Before he bought Exile.
Before he bought Observer. I became editor-in-chief in early 1996. And he bought the Observer in June of 1999. So, I was there, got arrested several times, got locked up several times. People don't know about that, but we were the first victims of the Yahya Jammeh regime. I did not testify at the TRRC because the commission decided that since I was the executive secretary, I could not be considered a victim to testify.
Yeah.
So I was there, from the very beginning. I was arrested many times. The NIA would come in the middle of the night.
That's an Observer.
At the Observer, yes. Or come on Sundays. When I at that time, when I went to work in the morning, I knew that I could be arrested before the end of the day. And I was locked up. I was never charged. I was locked up several times at NIA and the Serious Crime Unit. And I remember one very particular day, very frightening day. At the NIA, I was in the cell in the middle of the night, around 2 a.m. I wasn't sleeping. So suddenly the door opened. And then I saw very huge two men, very huge men, standing on the doorway looking at me. And so I said, hi. They said, oh, Mr. Jallow, we just came to check on you. And then they closed the door and went. I could have been killed.
Yes.
That was the beginning of the junglers. The junglers hadn't got deadly yet.
Yeah, they hadn't got.
So I was there until 1999. Kenneth Best had gone. The paper wasn't doing very well financially, and he was struggling in America financially. So he decided to sell the paper. And that was when Amadou Samba bought the paper for Yahya Jammeh, because if it is Baba Job, then it's Yahya Jammeh. So when they bought the paper, he called me to his office, Amadou Samba. Sadian Cisse was now the managing director. So we had a meeting, and he said...
Which Cisse?
Sarian Cisse.
Sarian Cisse.
Sarian Cisse. I think he's in the US now. So he said to me, well, we are restructuring the paper. We are having to let go of D.A. Jallow. D.A. Jallow is right here.
Yeah.
But we want you to stay on because you come very highly recommended by Mr. Best. So if you decide to stay on, I will make it attractive for you. I will give you a car. There was a Benz 280 that used to park in front of the Observer. I'll give you a car. I'll give you a house if you don't have a house. And I'll give you 100% increment, So I said to him, well, those are very attractive, that's a very attractive package. But if you sack D.A. Jallow, I am going to leave. I cannot work for a paper that sacks people for their public opinion, for their opinions. Because D.A. was running a column called Focus. And the column was, always attacking the military, attacking the regime. So they wanted to get rid of him. So I said, I might stay and help you maybe for a few months, but if you sack D.A. Jallow, then I have to go. But I guess they thought I was kidding. And so the following Friday, I think, or Sunday, they handed D.A. Jallow
a sack,
his termination letter.
Wow. And
D.A. came and said, Baba, well, they gave me my letter. I said, fine, I'm coming. So on Monday, I tendered my resignation. And they were shocked. They did not believe that this poor boy
could have left.
A Benz, almost brand new or second hand, very good Benz 280, a house, 100% increment in salary. That would have made me a rich man instantly. So I walked away from it. And, in those days, I would hear people say, Baba, boys all go ite bama futu, because I left this yaki ndeyam sayut, that kind of thing.
It's a usual thing in there.
Yeah, but I left it and I teamed up with my friend Galleh Jallow. He was freelance reporter then for the Observer, so I called him and we teamed up and we registered the Independent. And that's how the Independent came.
So you left in 1999 and you teamed up and then the Independent
Yeah, July 1999 we launched the Independent.
Yes.
Yeah, almost the same, because we were working on it on the ground. I knew that this wasn't going to last.
So, but Independent, the story of Independent and the story of the Observer, as far as you being at the center of attention for the regime is concerned, wasn't much different. I mean, in fact, it got worse.
It got worse.
Yeah.
It got worse because when we started the Independent, our first headline, front page headline, if you go to the archives now, you'll find it. We are not at war. That was the headline for the Bleed story, the first edition of the Independent. And what we are saying is that we did not start this paper in order to fight with the regime. We started this paper in order to keep alive the independent editorial policy that was at the Observer and that is now dying, that was going to die. We knew it was going to die.
Yeah. So
then the harassment just continued. It continued because I was being arrested and detained at the Observer, and they continued doing that. Twice we had arson attacks on the Observer. At one point, the Independent, sorry. At one point, they threw a petrol bomb into the offices, but fortunately that didn't cause a lot of harm. The second time they came at 2 a.m. to the a brand new printing press we got from the Germans.
It wasn't the US Embassy?
No, the Germans. Yeah. It was the Germans. I remember, I forgot the name of the lady who was the German ambassador here. So they poured petrol over it and burnt it down.
It is interesting because subject matter of that on that issue came in the parliament, and back then Sanamanjang was the name that was going around, that he was part of.
Yeah, exactly. Sanamanjang was said to be part of it because in the aftermath of the burning of the Independent Press, he had bombs on his hands, yeah. And also a pistol dropped there that was traced back to him. So yes, so it's interesting that, of course, when you look at the TRRC, you get the impression that even though the junglers it was still a culture that was developing, but it became more structured and more organized in around 2000 towards 2003. Yes,
but this seems to be the case that even before, around 1990s, the culture was developing.
Yes, it
was shaping into something that would later come to be more prominent in 2000s.
The Independent Press was burnt in the early 2000s. I can't remember the exact day. It wasn't in 1999. It took us about 3 years to move from Sedmati Road, then to Westfield, and then to Canifing, where our press house was, where the machine was burnt. So
you were married then. You were married then.
Oh yes, I was married.
And you had kids.
Yes.
And they were all resident in the Gambia.
Yes.
Do you have people expressing concerns, whether your wife or your kids?
Oh, people were asking me to leave journalism.
I mean, your wife or your kids?
Yes, they were concerned. And my wife was the accountant for the Independent at the time. Yes. So then came March 20.
That was so much risk, having to put a whole family under one roof.
Yeah, and one day the NIA came and just stripped all the staff.
Yes.
Everyone in the building was. Then
Madi Sise was the editor.
Madi Sise became the manager after I left. Okay. I appointed him. I appointed Madi Sise general manager of the Independent after I left. After I went to the US.
Yes, yeah.
I first appointed Galleh Jallow. He was there for about a year. And then he said he wanted to leave. He's a very private person, so he went to Dakar. And so after him, I appointed Madi Sise as the general manager. And I keep forgetting this boy's name, the boy who was tortured.
Musa Sedikan
as the editor-in-chief, of the Independent. They were the final management of the paper.
It's interesting because Independent story also came to be sort of immortalized in the court cases that came up in Switzerland.
Yes, exactly.
Where you have Musa testified, and he was one of the claimants against Usman Sonko.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes.
He was arrested with Madi Sise on the same day. They were severely tortured. And then after that, you know, they just locked up the paper. They just said, everyone out. Everyone came out, March 22, 2006, and they locked up the paper. That was the end of the independence.
You were following up things since then?
Yes, I was
until
still,
that time?
Yeah, I was the CEO of the paper.
Even when you were in the US?
Of course, it's my paper. I mean, my departure didn't mean that I stopped working. Most of the things that you see in this book were written for the Independent, and I wrote their editorials too. Some of their editorials, not all of them.
Actually, that would be defying the dictatorship. I think a lot of folks have. Well, I certainly have read it. Yeah. Is it still in print?
It is still in print. Well, I do have some copies with me at home.
Okay.
But it's not. I think Timbuktu doesn't have any more copies.
Okay.
But if you go to Amazon, for example, it's still there, still on it.
Great. If you need a copy, you can grab it. It's a collection of essays. I mean, we'll come to talk about it soon. So then, independent trial and errors. What sort of stuck with you in your days at Independent?
Well, I think our motto, because you know it's difficult to maintain the integrity of a media house. So when we started the Independent, we picked a motto that defied corruption, if you like. Truth is our principle. Mm-hmm. So if you grab a copy of the Independent right now, if you go online and search for a copy of the Independent, truth is our principle. You know, because we wanted to make sure that only the truth is published in the paper, that the paper pursues the truth, that it stands on the truth, it lives on the truth, and if it dies on the truth. So that sticks with me, because that is the way, that is how we manage to keep the paper in line. If a reporter came to report and they had to do a lot of digging. It's not like the stories you have nowadays. Just a paragraph or two and then the story is done. If you talk to Mustafa or you write about Mustafa, you have to find out the story on the other side of the scenario. So truth is our principle. That sticks with me. The other thing that sticks with me is that we are able to do what we set out to do, which was to hold our government accountable to the extent that it became unbearable for them, and they had to use force to sort us down.
Sort of much later on, so you left for the US and you were in the US, but you were still in touch. I mean, even after the Independent was closed down, you were still practicing.
I was still writing, yes.
Because you were still writing.
I was still writing. I mean, I never stopped writing. Most of the essays, again, in Defying Dictatorship, were written between, this collection is between 2012 and 2017, but there is an earlier collection that is not published from the moment I left the Gambia. And I published these articles on the Gambia L, and later on the Community of Gambian Scholars. There was also a listserv called Gambia Post, and there was Gainaka Online and the Chronicle and Pandering Bias Freedom newspaper. So I continued writing, and that is how I stood out as, you know, the very consistent voice against the dictatorship. And that is how Batabedo identified me after the fall of the dictatorship. When he called me, that's what he said: you have always been consistent in the struggle. So that's why we want you to come back to help us set up the TRRC and be the executive secretary. Is this an opportunity you would like to explore?
So, I mean, when you were in the US, regardless of that, you were also a university professor, or you were lecturing at the university?
I was a graduate student for the first 8 years. When I went, the first thing I did was file for asylum, because I had tons of evidence of my arrest, and you know, I was never tortured, fortunately. Psychological torture, yes, but not physical torture, because they hadn't gotten deadly yet, if you like. So I filed for asylum, I got asylum, and then I applied to university, to Rutgers University in New Jersey, and I did my master's in liberal studies there for 2 years. And after that, I transferred, I got admission to the African Studies program at Howard University in DC. I spent 1 year there. The program wasn't much to my liking. It was a very good program, but then I transferred to the University of California at Davis, where I completed my PhD in African history. And then from there, I became a professor, assistant professor of African history at Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska for 4 years. And then I transferred to LaSalle University in Philadelphia and continued to teach African history and world history there until 2017, when I got the invitation to come back. And since I came back, I've been here. I haven't gone anywhere, apart from the 2023-2024 academic year, which I spent as a fellow at Harvard University Law School, a fellow in negotiation and conflict resolution. So yeah, that's it. I was first a graduate student and then a lecturer.
So I mean, you've talked about being a satirist at the early days of your career.
Yes.
in writing, and something came to my mind when you were saying that, I mean, about characterizing Jammeh. I mean, we saw, I mean, if you are a satirist, I mean, this is a man who cured HIV and AIDS. All conventional doctors said it's impossible. And the only thing we saw was peanuts and banana and some herbal concoction. I had there's still a bunch of them in his house in Kadilai.
Right.
And even if you look at the dress code, Jammeh was developing from the early days of the coup. Even after he took away the uniform, he was dressed like a sultan, you know, like with those turbans worn around his neck and with on his chin and all of that. And he moved into something a little bit more like Gaddafi. Okay. Later on, he moved into this Garambu white stuff. And later on, 2 Qurans, 2 bits, prayer bits, 1 short. Nobody has ever seen a thing like it. I mean, how did you, like when you looked at Jammeh, what comes to your mind?
Well, you know, there was a thing, a form of writing I called angry laughter.
Yeah.
Angry laughter is a form of satire.
Yeah.
And, you know, I published a small book on it. If you look at the published, you know, the other works, there is angry laughter. And so I just laughed to avoid crying. And the characters I used were sometimes human beings, but mostly, you know, you had animal characters. So, for example, I wrote a series called Busulu Forest. Busulu Forest, and that started. It told the story of the Gambia from the beginning of the fall of the Jawara regime to the fall of the Jammeh regime. And all the animals there were, all the characters there were animals, but they were all human. So that is how I characterized it. It was a form of just letting go of the tension, the anger that I carried, because it was very, very, very annoying to see someone just abusing the rights of people and killing and raping and just doing anything he wanted as if he was a god.
Yeah. He was quite an interesting character, isn't he? I mean, what do you think was most amusing to you, I mean, as far as Jammeh is concerned?
Well, there is something called, in psychology, I think, or philosophy, the small man syndrome.
Yeah.
And that is the people, especially tyrants, they feel empty and small inside. So in order to make up for that emptiness and that smallness, they wear big ropes, they hold strange objects.
They project strength.
They project strength and mystery. That is a mask. It's a mask hiding a coward.
Yeah.
You know, the bravado, you know, the image that I'm a lion. Wherever you see people, you know, claiming to be lions, I'm sorry, they are cowards.
Well, he did threaten to wipe out America anyway.
Well, I don't know whether he threatened to do that, but I know that every dictator, every tyrant is a coward. That's just a psychological truth. And there is the introduction to this defined dictatorship is called the dictator, and it
Deconstructing the dictator.
no, the dictator.
Okay.
The dictator, that is a portrait of the psychology of the dictator itself.
Yeah.
That's the first chapter in this book.
Yeah.
So all the projections of strength and power were fake. That is quite amusing. Anytime you see him, pounding his chest and doing things, you know that behind all this bravado is a little frightened individual. Just recently, I read a story about Stalin, the Russian despot, and he was so feared by his people and even his bodyguards and his family that when he fell down, when he had a stroke and fell down in his room in the house or in his office, they were afraid to come in to help him because he said no one should disturb me, and if you disturbed him, you died. So that's how he spent hours there, and eventually he lost his life because people were too afraid of him.
Yeah.
But he was paranoid. He slept with a pistol under his bed, under his pillow. He killed people and chained people left, right, and center. At the end of the day, what killed him was inside of him.
Yeah, I saw you make a Facebook comment about something mimicking something about what is inside of people. I mean, I think yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday, yes, and that comment was that. The post was that our greatest enemy is not someone out there, but something in us.
Yeah.
And that is bigger than this particular thing I'm talking about.
Okay.
It's just one aspect of it.
Okay.
Because jealousy, envy, cruelty, all of the things that the emotions that we feel, the passions, the hatred, the jealousy, and the desire for more and more, all of those things are not out there.
Yeah,
they're in us, and they are the ones that actually destroy us at the end of the day.
So let's talk about the issue of you. Were you able to come back even when Jammeh was here, or were you exiled? Were you sort of, or did you just not come because of your safety?
I was in exile. I mean, exile doesn't mean that the government would grab you and throw you out. You leave when you know that your life is in danger.
It's in danger, yeah.
And I believe that if I was here, I would have been dead long ago because I was more radical than some of my good colleagues who were killed. Deda Hydra, for example, was a very mild and soft-spoken journalist. His writings were not radical at all. He would tell you the truth, the hard truth, and that is what he did. Good morning, Mr. President. You should do this, you should not do that. Very mild and very sensible advice is what he gave the president. I would come out swinging. I would come out swinging. In all its manifestations, I was very, very radical. My writings were very harsh. Right now, if I think of the things that I used to write, I sometimes get scared. I didn't know what I was doing. I was committing suicide, if you like. I would have been killed. So then
that's more to the fact that you know much later about the operation of the junglers, or you are speaking?
No, not necessarily. From the very beginning, when Jammeh broke his promise, that's where I broke ranks with him. In the early days of the coup, I was one of those who said, give them a chance. They are soldiers with a difference, they say they're going to step down in 2 years and hand over. When they broke that promise, that was it. From there on to the very end, I never stopped criticizing them. So in 2000, sometime in April or May 2000, we got a tip-off, both Alaji Yoro and I, that the regime was going to try and deport us, if you like, because they first sent immigration officers to the independent. And the immigration officers came and asked for me. I came out and spoke to them and invited them into my office, and they said, well, the DG, the Director General, asked us to come and check on your citizenship. Can we see your passport? I said, well, I don't have my passport here, but if you come back in the afternoon, I'll give you a copy. I won't give you my passport at all. So in the afternoon, they came back, and I had copied my passport. I gave them a copy of the passport. So that very same day or the next day, they traveled to Farafenni, my hometown. And they called my mom, they arrested them, my mom and dad, and took them to the police station and interrogated them for the whole day. You know, in a bid to, I think, well, what were they trying to do to find out whether I was a Gambian? And this
sort of to intimidate you.
Yeah, it was an intimidation tactic. I think they wanted to disappear me. I think the junglers were then beginning to get dangerous because they held my mom and dad for the whole day. They seized their ID cards. My mom and dad died without ID cards many years later, you know. And then a few days after that,
so the ID cards were never returned?
They were never returned to this day. A few days later, I got a tip-off, or we got a tip-off from the immigration. Someone at the immigration called to say, you know, Baba, I think they're trying to, they want to deport you.
But how do you deport a citizen?
Well, make him disappear. Make him disappear, that's what I read to it. So I called the consul at the US Embassy. He was a very good friend, I forgot his name now. He used to come to the Independent to offer solidarity. And when I explained to him, he said, you know, don't come here, just send your driver and your passport and the visa fees. We'll give you a visa to the US. So that's how I got my visa. And when left here with a backpack, you know, joined the GPTC bus to Dakar, and then took a flight from there to the US. And I was in exile for 17 years.
17
but I was never away from the Gambia. And I can tell you, exile is not easy.
It's not easy.
You know, no wonder someone is crying.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Jammeh.
Exile is a very difficult condition to be in.
Yeah.
Because your mind is always at home.
At home, yeah.
Always at home.
Yeah. You feel like the very oxygen you breathe is the prison.
Exactly. Exile is an open prison. They call it a prison of the spirit.
Yeah.
It's an open prison.
Yeah.
You know, because you can go anywhere but the place you want to go, and that is home.
So I mean, yeah. So independent happened. Then you left the independent. You went into exile, and your comeback was after 2017.
In 2017.
In 2017.
Yes.
And that's after Jammeh left.
Yes.
When you, of course, you must have been involved in the process, in the political process that eventually kicked out Jammeh, because a lot of things were happening, a lot of different things doing, different people doing different things.
Right.
And so, what was the sentiment when you had Jammeh left? I had you characterize that in the book. I read you characterize.
I cried. I was, you know, there is a chapter in this book called From Exile with Love.
Yeah.
And I wrote that chapter, and it was an article initially. I wrote it when I saw, where I sat, I saw Jammeh walk into the plane and wave at the crowd, and he was leaving the Gambia. And the tears just started falling on my face. I mean, I just cried. I cried, you know, when I saw that happening. And then, you know, I just said, turned to my wife and said, I'm going home. That is even before I knew I was invited to come back home to serve as executive secretary of the TRRC. You know, yeah, so it was a very passionate moment. I didn't believe it, because in exile...
You said that there is no doubt that the political consciousness of the Gambian people has grown significantly since Jammeh seized power in the 22 years ago. And you thought, I mean, it was as a result of political consciousness grown that Jammeh was sort of kicked out, but also failure of his promises.
It was. If people hadn't, you know, one good thing that Jawara did, you know, when we were young, we were going to school, was that he instilled a democratic spirit in this country. People got to know that, you know, the state to respect the rights of all innocent people. So by the time Jawara left, there was instilled in a lot of us, the young people, the spirit of democracy. I was the head boy at Gambia High School, and I led a demonstration against a problem that still exists today, that is transportation. After school, you see students standing everywhere. So when I was head boy at Gambia High School, I led a protest against that, against the Jammeh regime. I was not arrested. You know, I was not sacked. I was not expelled from school. You know, Louis Njai called us to her office, the Minister of Education, and had a conversation and promised that they would give us buses. They gave us 30 new buses immediately. And then after the independence celebration, they withdrew the buses. And guess what? On speech day, when I was giving my speech, that was a very hot day. Jawara was there, Bibi Dawo was there, Louis Njai was there at the Gambia High School. I still remember it very clearly. And I blasted the government severely. I blasted the government. People like Coach Pasambajaw and others can tell you about this. But no one arrested me. I continued with my education, I finished, and I went to college. You know, that is different from now. So there was a very visible consciousness, political consciousness in the country, from the young people to the old, because there had been, Moja and other older activist movements in the country. So that is why Jammeh never managed to silence the Gambian people, because the voice had already been there and it wasn't going to be silenced.
Yeah. So fast forward, you became the executive director of TRRC, executive secretary of TRRC somewhere in 2019. Because TRRC was created. Yes. So TRRC had started here in 2019. It was created much earlier.
Yes, I was invited back home in the fall of 2017. I arrived in the Gambia precisely on December 30th, 2017. On February 1st, 2018, I was appointed executive secretary of the TRRC, and I was giving a blank slate. You know how it was. Yeah. You know, just set this thing up, from scratch. And I was here for 6 months without salary, without a car, and without an office. And during this period was when you conceptualized the TRRC and set it up. The commissioners were recruited in October of 2018, and hearings started in January of 2019.
Yeah. So, I mean, being we'll come to that later. But starting a TRRC from that point of view, have you had an imagination or sort of, I'm sure you must have an expectation, but when the hearings were had and the testimonies were had, everything was done, would you say that you were shocked?
Oh yes, from the testimonies, the revelations. Yeah. Oh yes, it was shocking.
It was shocking.
It was shocking. We knew that there were human rights violations, torture, disappearances, but the intimate details of the torture, the types of cruelty that the NIA and the junglers meted out on people, that was shocking.
Did you go?
Many times we cried. I cried, and some of the commissioners cried too in the hall. So if you watch some of the hearings, you would see me get up sometimes and go in the middle of a testimony. You go behind and cry.
Did you go to the NIA to see, some of their safe houses? They had cuffs hanged on the wall, and I think one time at NIA also they had an iron bed and something. Did you see something?
Well, we went to the NIA. The commission made a side visit to the NIA, if you remember. And but what we found, we saw Bambadinka.
Yes.
Of course, we were shown a place and told this is Bambadinka, the infamous underground prison. And we did see some iron hooks on the wall.
On the wall, yes.
That we are used to chain prisoners. Yeah. But most of the evidence had already been obliterated.
Yes.
And that is why Usman Sow, the director, was accused by the commission of destroying evidence. And then he was recommended for banning from public office for 10 years.
Were you disappointed that's not done?
Well, it's not for me to get disappointed. I think that it should have been done. The right thing to do would have been to follow the recommendations of the commission, but that recommendation in particular was not accepted at all from the very beginning.
Yeah.
It was one of the earliest two recommendations that were rejected. One was the Usman Sow recommendation to be banned from public office for 10 years, and the other was to sanction the mercenary judges from Nigeria, to also ban them from coming into the country for a period of time. Both of those were rejected. The Nigerians, because the government argued that it would have been a diplomatic embarrassment, and that these Nigerians were coming here on technical support, so they did not want to strain relations with Nigeria. It was a bit disappointing, but yeah.
So, I mean, how was it for you? You were, ethically, you were a victim of a regime, as well as somebody who had to set up a process that is coming to investigate the very violations, some of which you suffered yourself. Was there a dilemma for you?
No, there was never a dilemma for me, because I was able to remove myself from the victimhood mentality and focus on my professional work to set up an institution that represented everyone. Because if you are the head of a transitional justice organization, you understand that this institution is composed or represents both the state and the nation, both victims and perpetrators. And so you had to walk a very thin line. And I think all of you were here. I don't think at any point you saw me behave like a victim or claim that I was a victim or do things that were supposedly biased against perpetrators. I was able to just let the work be done the way it should be done. And I insisted on it from start to finish. And just a few days ago, and I don't even want to name his name, but somebody claimed that I left the Independent in the middle of the work to pursue my political ambitions, which is not true. I did want to resign from the Independent, but when the AG, Galleh Jallow, when he received my resignation letter, he immediately called me and said, "We want you to stay, please."
You mean the TRRC?
The TRRC, I'm talking about the TRRC now. Someone just falsely claimed that I left the TRRC in the middle of the work, and that jeopardized the work of the commission. If people are making allegations, they should make allegations that are based on truth. You don't just make allegations because you want to destroy somebody's character or you want to harm the person for whatever reason.
That political career never actually...
It never went off. I changed my mind. Because the AG called me, Galleh Jallow, he's right here, he probably would watch this podcast. I don't hide behind the things I say because I know I'm telling the truth. Galleh Jallow called and said, please, we want you to stay on. Your services are still needed at the Observer, at the TRRC. And so in fact, I'm coming over. So he came over to the TRRC, to Dunes Resort right here, and met with me and Dr. Cisse in Dr. Cisse's office, the chair. And at the end of the day, I agreed to withdraw my resignation letter. So I withdrew my resignation letter, which I had already sent to him and to some of the media. So I withdrew the resignation letter and I stayed on. I was the first staff of the TRRC and I was the last staff of the TRRC. I was there between February 1st, 2018 and February 28, 2022. 4 years. I was there full time. And with the exception of the 1 year that I spent at Harvard, I've been in the Gambia since I came back home. So if people are making allegations, they should just fear Allah. Especially they fear God. Some of those who pretend to be pious and carry prayer beads everywhere and had there's a Bible, and then you go around, saying things that are not true about other people just to destroy their record or destroy their reputation.
What's the situation now? Why didn't you seem to have abandoned it completely, the political...
Say again?
You seem to have abandoned it completely.
Well, in terms of running for political office, yes.
You seem to have abandoned it.
For now, yes, I have, because I realized that I do not have the resources that might be necessary to run for president at this point. I'm not ashamed of that. And there are other factors that are preventing me also, including pain in my leg that I need to take care of.
I remember you used to talk, you used to write a lot about that, especially when it comes to There was something you were doing at EFSTH. There was a...
Oh yes, yes. Yeah, exactly.
You used to go there for something.
For scanning.
Therapy or something?
No, not therapy. What do they call it? X-ray.
X-ray.
When I found the colonial style X-ray machine there.
Yeah.
Yes, and I still write. Yeah. I still write on politics.
Yeah.
You know, but in terms of like seeking elective
political office, you've abandoned that.
I have abandoned it for now.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know about the future, but for now I have, yes.
So, I mean, after aside from the TRRC, your activity at the TRRC, you also, after the TRRC, you were involved in this organization called Never Again Network.
Yeah.
And you sort of, is it still active?
Well, it's not active because unfortunately, when I went to Harvard for my one-year fellowship, my colleagues, and I don't blame them, they probably have more profitable things to do. They did not do anything in my absence for a whole year. And so it was a bit disheartening, a bit disappointing that, things would only work if you are on the ground. And so when I came, I just decided to let it lie fallow for now, because I expected things to happen. They continued activities, write letters to the schools, go, organize activities here and there. Unfortunately, they were not able to organize even a single activity in my absence, and so that was a bit discouraging for me. So, because you don't just pull an organization as a single person, it's supposed to be a collective effort.
Let's come to current. In one of the essays that you wrote in this book, Defying Dictatorship, you have said that Jammeh was rejected because he, among many other things, had failed one of the promises that he has made, in the sense that he accused Jawara of self-perpetuation, and then he came to do the very thing that he criticized Jawara for. And apparently that's also the situation we are in right now. Barrow have talked about self-perpetuation, and now he's shooting for third term.
Absolutely so.
Yeah.
Absolutely so, and that's true, and that's why I just recently, this week actually, I wrote an open letter to him to remind him that he was made a coalition candidate on the idea that he would serve for 3 years. After 3 years, he broke his promise because he was an incumbent. He couldn't be forced out of office. So he asserted his constitutional right to stay on for 5 years.
Yeah.
And after 5 years, he asserted his constitutional right to run for election. And after that, he asserted his constitutional right now to run for another election. That is a betrayal of the trust that the Gambian people had in him. It's a breaking of his promise, which should not be done by any human being.
You said it's constitutional, but it's immoral.
It is constitutionally right, but morally wrong. That's what I said.
Yeah.
And I would say that anyway. Constitutionally, he has a right to do that. Morally, is wrong. And you cannot draw a line between legality and morality. They are intertwined. They are part of the human condition.
Yeah.
So if you make a promise to the people, even to yourself, you should fulfill it. So he has a right, I argued, legal right to run for president, but he has no right to cross the dreams of the Gambian people.
In other words, if you tell someone, I give you my word, it should mean something.
It should be your word. Because ultimately, you are going to have to answer for it. There is no doubt about that. You will answer for it here, and if you believe in God, if you worship God, if you die, you're going to answer for it. So there is no escaping responsibility for the promises that we make.
So the issue of talking about God, but the issue of Jammeh was rejected. You seem to argue that this is also, of course, Jammeh was rejected for many reasons, but part of the reasons also is that he failed the promises he has made.
Right.
Do you think that could have been Barrow's faith? You think he...
Well, it could be, it may not be, because it depends on a number of factors. I'm not saying that if he runs for office, he's going to be defeated. I never said that in my letter. I like to say things very clearly, so that anytime I'm called upon to repeat it, I'll be able to repeat exactly what I said. I did not speculate on the possibility of his defeat. He could very well be defeated very severely. There's no doubt about that. And what I was trying to do in that open letter was to tell him, look, Mr. President, I know you have the right, the legal right to run, but running would be morally wrong. So my advice to him in that letter was, select somebody that you can trust, somebody that nation can trust, and make them a candidate for the NPP, and help them. If they win, hand over power graciously and retire. That is what I wrote in the open letter. And my motivation was purely, I don't want to use the word patriotic, but it was purely human. I do not want him to commit the mistakes of Yahya Jammeh and the mistakes that other African leaders have committed, leading to crisis in the country, because ultimately if he stays on and he could not be removed by the ballot box, he would be removed by the bullet. There's no doubt about that.
You have, is that more your fear, that to preserve the democracy, we have to not just have men of principle, we also have to have standards.
Exactly.
Term limits.
Exactly. And that is, and the other reason is that is what we have fought for, all of us, for 22 years. We were in exile, a lot of people were killed, people were tortured, because we were against self-perpetuating rule. And when Mr. Barrow came, he promised to end self-perpetuating rule. I remember him in one of his interviews saying, I'm a huge fan of term limits. So what happened?
But he did also say, when you are campaigning, you can say anything.
Yes, when you are campaigning, you can say anything, which is not, I don't agree with that. You cannot say anything you want. If it is not true, don't say it. If you will not keep your promise, don't make it. But once you make a promise, you have to sacrifice your self-desire, your personal desires, your personal interest to the interest of the society. That is what people should do.
But when you said it's not moral, do you feel like not only did he betray his own words, he also betrayed the aspirations of the people? Do you feel that the aspirations of the people was that there should be term limit?
Absolutely so. That is what we fought for. I was there from the beginning to the end. What the Gambian people fought for was a lot of things. One, an end to dictatorship, tyranny, torture, and all this, breaking of the law. But most importantly, one way of stopping that kind of thing would be to have term limits in the constitution. So that when Jammeh came, he said, we will never allow anyone to rule this country for more than 10 years. If you go to the archives, you see exactly that quote. We will make sure that no one stays in power for more than 10 years. We are not here to stay. So he broke that promise, and we opposed him on that ground. Now, Mr. Barrow has also broken his promise to instill term limits, and he wants to stay on and run because he feels that he has the constitutional right, which is right, but the constitution is flawed. And second, he feels that he can win the elections again. And I heard,
but that constitution
in a recent speech that he made, him talking about 2035, which is kind of scary in a sense. It doesn't mean that he would win the 2026 elections, but if he follows his desire, his passion for power, then we are in with Barrow for a long time.
And even in the constitution you were making reference to, was also part of the very things that should have changed. It was also part of the promise.
Absolutely. That was at the core of the struggle. The 1997 constitution either delete or remove all of the draconian laws and the bad laws like the Public Order Act and other decrees that are still in the constitution, and the Public Order Act in particular, which is a colonial law that was passed in 1962, before independence, to control the aspirations of the Gambian people. That colonial law is still in the books. Draconian decrees are still in the books. According to the TRRC recommendations, all of those laws should have been gone by now, but they are still there. So the very constitution that the dictator used to oppress and keep the Gambian people down is the constitution that Mr. Barrow is using to perpetuate himself in power.
Barrow said we are not part of the reasons why we couldn't get a new constitution was because the earlier version of the 2020 constitution was controversial for many reasons, but the prominent one was that it says Barrow was going to serve only 2 terms, and that the first time he had served back then was going to count among the only 2 terms he could serve.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That is it.
The Barrow said it targeted him. Do you not think that it has some degree of legitimacy?
It doesn't target him per se. The thing is 2 terms is 10 years. You serve as 10 years as president, you step down. And if he had stepped down at the end of the 2nd term, or if he steps down now, which is the end of his 2nd term, and then a few years down the line, he comes back to contest elections, he could win. He could win the elections again and become a more legitimate, more loved president. The reality is that the Constitutional Review Commission made a decision that, a conclusion that the first 3 years of Adama Barrow, the transitional period, and the 2 years he added to that, the 5-year, the first term, should be counted as part of his 2 terms. And I think that's a legitimate assessment.
But one could say that if you look at our political environment, it's not, morals is not something that governs that sphere.
Morals govern human life.
No, but do you hold the view that because this issue of people saying things they don't believe or betraying their own words or not keeping them, it's totally widespread. It's not unique to Barrow.
No, I'm not saying it's unique to Barrow. I never said that.
So moral argument in the politics, if you want to apply it to Barrow, it would be discriminatory, wouldn't it?
No, it's not discriminatory. I'm addressing Barrow. If I address some other person, I would address them. And when you address Barrow, when you send a message to a political leader, you are addressing him in person, but you are addressing the society in general, because he is the symbol of the society. He is a representative of the society. I know that moral decadence is widespread in the Gambia now. It's not confined to any particular individual, but you have to have a subject that you are addressing.
Do you think that for our society to progress, we will have to have a much stronger moral consideration?
Absolutely.
Aside from constitution, legal and stuff.
Yes. If for our society to go in the right direction, we have to follow the right path.
Ethical leadership.
Every day Muslims pray, Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim.
Yes.
Guide us on the straight path. Christians make the same prayer, or the religions say the same prayer. But at the same time, you pray for guidance on the straight path, but your actions do not follow the straight path. For our society to go forward, we have to have truth and honesty in the center of our political discourse and in the center of our political practice. There is no way around it.
Why did you feel compelled to make this statement? Because I asked this because in the book, where you talked about one sociologist, and you had said that that he characterized a certain group of Gambian or a certain group of intellectuals, not Gambian, as inactionaries, and sort of people who said, let me read the person. You said. You make a claim that these are the type of intellectuals the sociologists C. Wright Mills calls inactionarists. They convince themselves they are not doing anything bad, and they are independent beings who have no bone to pick with unjust system as long as it does not attack them or theirs, or that they are not interested in politics. Do you feel compelled because you think that it's not a moment to be silent when you have a strong belief that things are not going right?
Yes, absolutely. And the intellectuals I refer to there during the struggle, we have a lot of Gambian intellectuals. You know that, right? Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, I don't know, in the diaspora. And I was part of the Gambia L and the community of Gambian scholars, where you have very, very highly educated Gambians all over the world. You never hear them say a word about politics. They're outside, and even sometimes in the country, having very good jobs, enjoying their lives. They don't care about the political situation in the country. And yet, when the country comes up in flames, everyone suffers, including them. So those are the intellectuals that I'm addressing there.
So you think no one should be sitting on a fence in a country? You have to take a side, because sitting on a fence is sort of aiding and abetting the corrosive nature, the corrosive sort of ills of the society, corruption, malgovernance and other things.
Yeah, in fact, yes. Particularly people who are educated, particularly intellectuals. I think if you call yourself or dare to call yourself an intellectual, I know I'm not one, and you see something wrong going on in the society, then you need to speak out against it. But during the Jammeh period, and I think that's continuing now, a lot of educated Gambians in the diaspora in particular, were quiet, and they would come to Gambia on holidays, enjoy their holidays here when the junglers were killing and the NIA were torturing people, and then go back to their cozy jobs, in the West. Those are the ones that I'm addressing in the book. Yeah, but then I did not feel compelled because of their silence. I feel compelled to continue doing what I was doing.
Now, that's what I'm trying to say. That you feel compelled because you felt like being silent will make you look like that.
Well, not look like them. It's just my responsibility to not be silent.
Yeah.
In the face.
But you said it quite strongly that true intellectual neither sells his or her soul to the devil nor remains mute over social injustice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So do you think that to be mute over the issue of term limit is to be mute over sort of betrayal? Because so governance is a social contract.
Exactly.
If you break a social contract, social injustice in a way.
It's social injustice in a way, and you are watching. It's like watching your house burn, and just sitting there without taking the fire extinguisher. The advice that we give out is given us symbolically as a form of fire extinguisher, as a form of deterrence to what could happen if the right course of action is not taken. And we kept saying these things to Jammeh for over 22 years, and he didn't pay heed. And what is the result now? So it's the same thing. The country is doing much better in terms of the opening of democratic space under Mr. Barrow. But then it would be a mistake for him to think that he could just continue being in power and that things would remain the same, because that's exactly what Jammeh thought.
Now let's go to the final segment of this interview. I've already kept you for too long, but it's interesting. You've said things have changed in a big way.
Things have changed a little.
A little,
yes.
Not a big way.
Well, a medium way.
Okay. But so let's look at the issue of transition from Jammeh to Jawara, because the heart of that transition is the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission. When you were coming to the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission, of course, these were very excited moments in the Gambia. I remember a survey that was done towards the midway of 2018, painted Barrow as the most trusted leader in the Gambia. Not political leader, the most trusted leader. Somewhere down the line, of course, around 2021, when the surveys were done, it was much different. But this time, the Barrow's popularity was all-time high. And I'm so also you being at the heart of TRRC and seeing all what you have seen, you must have imagined a new Gambia. Okay? And in your imagination, what was that new Gambia that you had imagined?
Well, it was the Gambia that I had always struggled for over my period in exile and as a journalist in the Gambia. And there's a Gambia, a democratic Gambia, a Gambia based on truth, a Gambia led by ethical leadership, a Gambia that would have term limits, constitutional term limits, respect for the rule of law, respect for human rights, respect for human dignities, and a prosperous Gambia as well. I think we had a chance to be a bigger model. Right now, in terms of transitional justice, we are a model for the world. That I can tell you because I travel all over the place at the invitation of other countries to share the Gambian experience on TV. But, besides that, we wanted a Gambia that would have term limits. you serve for 2 times, you step down. I think that is the single biggest transformation that I was expecting.
You said it's time for big renaissance in Little Gambia.
Yes, big renaissance in Little Gambia, exactly. So I was expecting the renaissance to happen. But it
And
did not.
you're disappointed.
Yes, to some extent I am. To some extent I'm not, because to some extent that we all know that the democratic space has opened. We cannot deny that.
Yeah.
However much you
The media space has also
or criticize somebody, you have to admit that there has been progress. The democratic space is more relaxed now. The media is more free. Human rights organizations, there is a lot of activity going on. There is a lot of reparations, a lot of recommendations of the TRRC that still need to be implemented, but there is some progress. And the media space and democratic space is open. At the same time, a whole lot has not been done. Some of the core issues, and at the center, at the heart of those core issues, is the issue of term limits.
But
that has not been done.
Do you not think that this is going to be an argument? You can disagree and you can also expatiate.
You don't need to. You can restore. I disagree if I disagree.
You can also expatiate. Do you not think that two of the most core fundamental issues that sort of led to what Jammeh ultimately became were self-perpetuation, that is the desire to remain in power forever, and also corruption? Which was widespread because you needed to keep it secret, and that people were fighting to reveal it more. Like the Independent, the Observer, the others, the journalists were exiled because of this. And this ultimately led to censorship and all these other vices that emanates. And if you do agree, would you not think that those fundamental issues are still prevalent with Barrow? Because, one, he has the desire to self-perpetuate. In fact, he did say the last meeting, I remember I watched it on Facebook, that if UDP will come, so if they say they shouldn't go for 4th term, I think he said
something like that.
So self-perpetuation, the desire for it is still there. Corruption, seems to be, by most popular opinion and by observations and by press reports, seems to be widespread. Do you fear that those key ingredients that made us what we were under Jammeh are also prevalent?
Well, yeah, absolutely, I agree. I don't disagree with you on this one. I totally agree. There is a desire by the president to perpetuate himself in power, to stay in power. Contrary to what reason and morals dictate. There is also widespread corruption. I think there is more corruption in Gambia today than there was under Jammeh, because under Jammeh, people were afraid. If you were caught stealing monies, if all of these revelations were made under Jammeh, then a lot more victims would have been counted. People would have disappeared, people would have been killed or sent to jail. So people seem not to be quite afraid now of engaging in corruption, and so corruption is more widespread now, or at any rate more visible to the public now, because of some of the things that have happened, especially the media freedom and the freedom of information, the access to information that you journalists have today. So yes, those two evils are still prevalent. Another issue that needed very urgent and very sustained attention and addressing is the civic culture. The civic culture hasn't changed that much in terms of people's perceptions and understandings of government and the role of government in society and their relationship with government. That was one of the reasons why the TRRC launched the Never Again campaign, to discuss the civic culture, to tell people power actually resides in you, but that work still needs to be done.
So we are yet to have a citizen that sort of, but you were quite excited that a new Gambian was born. Political consciousness, what pushed Jammeh out? Well,
a level of political consciousness, it wasn't, I never said it was like all the Gambians are now Badibunkas and they are now...
Yeah, we definitely are politically conscious.
Politically enlightened. I did not say that.
What
I said was there was a certain level of political consciousness throughout the Jammeh regime that made it impossible for him to silence the struggle. against him. He never succeeded. He never succeeded in silencing people like me, people like Coach Pasamba Jawo, the Gambian diaspora outside. A lot of activists continue talking from the beginning to the end. So when people are exiled or driven out of the country, what they do is find a new platform on top. But I never said, if I had believed that there was 100% political consciousness, I wouldn't have bothered in launching the Never Again Net campaign. And the Never Again campaign continued until the end of the TRRC, and we launched the Never Again Network. And still, we are continuing to advocate for political awareness to be increased, because it's still not very high for the majority of the people. There is a critical mass of Gambians who are more conscious today than they were back in 2017. In terms of political advocacy and political interest. But a lot of work still needs to be done in that area. So civic culture, corruption, self-perpetuation, those are the three issues that really need attention in this country.
If you look at the political climate under which we had the TRRC, it was very clear. You have Barrow causing up largely to the UDP. He was still struggling to make his own political whatever, but he was still causing up towards the UDP. Much later, he started struggling within to find a new political home, and ultimately NPP emerged. And at this time, the TRRC was under huge attack by the APRC, which had at the time a declining support. But later on we saw there was a merger between NPP and APRC and all the other small political groups, and this is necessitated because he had to have an alternative to UDP. Do you think that political merger also became a little bit, it came to affect how the president saw the good work, the implementation of the recommendation of the TRRC? Because the APRC was in no doubt that, in fact, Tombong said TRRC report should be binned.
In the trust, yeah. I think it did affect it. I mean, if the APRC alliance people, as opposed to North Alliance, joined Barrow because they thought by joining Barrow they would muzzle and nullify the findings of the TRRC recommendations, the finding of the TRRC. But you see, one good thing is that we anticipated some kind of sort of betrayal on the part of the government. Governments betray Truth Commission findings across the board. That was one lesson that I brought into the TRRC. We knew that we had to make sure that the findings of the commission are known to everyone from day one. And that was why we had such a transparent process. We had a media partner, QTV. All of you guys came, you covered the hearings. We are on TV, they are on radio, they are on Facebook, social media, they are on YouTube. And to this day, you can get any TRRC recording, any TRRC hearing you want. Now, that was to make sure that everyone knew what the findings of the commission are from beginning to end. Most truth commissions before the TRRC would have their hearings behind closed doors or semi-closed doors, and the public would just be audiences to the hearing. So at the end of the day, the report would be published, and sometimes the report is just left to gather dust on government offices. So we managed to avoid that by making sure that everyone knew what the findings of the commission are from start to finish. So that makes it difficult for Mr. Barrow, because of his alliance with the APRC, to just throw the TRRC findings into the bin, because they are already in the people's minds. And you cannot pick them from there and throw them in the bins.
It wasn't,
but
go ahead.
It did lead to a delay. It did lead to a fall in the political will to implement the recommendations, because most of the recommendations, if not all of them, are directed to the government, the APRC government that's out of power.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it, also, you must have been viewing, the politics. You are a very active person.
I must have been.
you must have been seeing the merger unfolding and the conversations about APRC and NPP. Does that make you unsettled while after the TRRC? Were you unsettled?
Well, unsettled might not be the term to describe me, but I was concerned.
You were concerned?
Yes, I was concerned that, and I actually knew that if Mr. Barrow goes into an alliance with the APRC, for his own personal political interest, it could affect the implementation of the recommendations. There was no doubt about that. And especially after he appointed Mr. Fabakary and Mr. Yai as Speaker and Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly. I think that was very concerning because this is the lawmaking house, and these are former enablers of the dictatorship.
Yeah. In that sense, I mean, of course, you had, I mean, they were enablers of the dictatorship, but also you could say they were also you've talked about morals, right?
Yeah.
And you think that ethical leadership, morals should be at the center of governance. If you bring a soldier who shot students in 2002, April, and before a court, and then you are dining with a political leader who was a majority leader in the parliament, who defended the actions of those soldiers who shot students back then. Do you feel that's justice or that's vengeance? I mean, does that?
Well,
you get the point I'm trying to make.
I get the point you're trying to make. I would separate the two processes. I think there is a link at some point, but then because he has an alliance with the APRC, does it mean that individuals who committed human rights violations should not be brought before a court of law? If you think that should be the case, then no one is going to be brought, to justice. Deal with the two situations differently. Mm-hmm. One is political alliance between the ruling party and the former governing party that was the architect of the government that committed these human rights violations. Two is an individual who had committed human rights violations under that same government. So there is a moral dilemma there.
Yeah.
There is definitely a moral dilemma.
That's what I'm heading at. Like you bring, on the one hand, a soldier who was under authority of the head of state.
Right.
And a soldier could barely, under Jammeh, soldiers could barely refuse orders and survive it. So go and shoot students and he said, I'm not going.
No, you
bring, yes, exactly. So you bring that person before a court of law to try him on the killing of students in April 10 and 11.
Yeah.
And now, one of the key voices of the people who defended that action, who was also working for Jammeh, is with you, whining and dining.
Yes.
So on the one hand, the political class had faced no consequences, yet the security officials are facing consequences.
That's right. That's definitely right. But the fact that he is whining and dining with the supporters of the dictator doesn't preclude the necessity to bring perpetrators of human rights violations to justice. True. Even at some point, I think everyone is going to be answerable to what they have done at their own level. So yes, it's a moral dilemma unless you want to close your eyes. The politics of eye closing is very common in the Gambia. You just close your eyes and walk. It doesn't matter whether you bump into a wall or not. If you bump into a wall, you hit it and break it. So, but yes, it is a problem. I think what that has done, in my mind, I think what that has done is that it has weakened the political will of the government to pursue some of the recommendations of the TRRC in terms of persecuting people, for example, in terms of banning people from public office. That very moral dilemma that I'm talking about, that you spoke about, is probably part of the reason why the recommendations on perpetrators to be banned from public office are still not being implemented. And the slowness in the prosecution.
I think only 19 of the only 19 of the 192 recommendations are fully implemented, or either 14 or something.
20% is 20%. What the National Human Rights Commission said.
Yeah.
And that is up from 16% from last year, which is still very small.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the reparations, the commission recommended, calculated that the total reparations package would be around $205 million. And we were able to dish out. We were given 50 million that we dished out. So there is still a balance of $168 million in terms of reparations due to Gambian victims alone. That is, not part of the 32 million that the Commission recommended to be given to the West African migrants, and additional reparations to be paid to victims who are now coming out to register, supplementary list of victims. So in the 2025 budget, the government allocated 30 million to the Reparations Commission. And part of that 30 million, the 10 million is for operational cost. Only 20 million will go to victims. And that 20 million is like about 12% of the 168 million.
In any case, though, the U.S. Potomac Mansion money is coming to the commission.
I don't know. What we know is what is allocated in the budget. Whether that is coming to the commission or not is yet to be seen. We know that 2025, the government allocated 20 million to payment for victims and 10 million for the operations of the Reparations Commission. And 20 million is just 11% or 10% of the total reparations money required.
If you look at most of the international crime cases, when perpetrators are convicted, one of the things that happens is that the lawyers usually apply for them to compensate their victims. We've seen this in Usman Sonko case. There is a compensation package the court made as part of its judgment for Usman to make to his victims. And likely, if you have Jammeh in the court anytime, it's likely to be the case. But not much is left of Jammeh's assets.
How can they pay? Those are just legal procedures. But Usman Sonko cannot afford to pay.
He has no money, yes.
I don't think Jammeh is eventually brought.
Yes, but Usman Sonko may not have around 800,000 Swiss francs, but Jammeh has a lot of money.
Right now?
Well, the assets were taken from him, but
the assets are not his.
But the point I was trying to drive at was government forfeited the assets because Jammeh was seen to have stolen from the people. But there is nothing left of the 1-point-something billion they made from the sales.
No, I wouldn't know. Maybe the rats took it, but I wouldn't know, honestly. But yeah, if Jammeh was also convicted and asked to pay money, then I don't. That is normally just legal procedure. But they wouldn't. Even the courts know that some of these perpetrators wouldn't have the money. So what they might do then is increase the time that they would spend in jail.
But if you look at the reparations, was it reasonable to you that government that was selling so much of Jammeh's assets could not pay all of the reparations?
I think the reparations should have been paid by now. Every single. It's like 200 million. And you're talking about 1-point-something billion.
1.3 billion.
Yes. 1.3 billion.
Yeah.
The reparations package in total.
And that's just a fraction of Jammeh's assets sold.
The reparations package in total, as assessed by the TRRC, if my memory serves me right, and I think it does, is $205 million.
Yes.
50 million was paid, 168 million was the balance, and it's the balance that is supposed to be paid to Gambian victims, in addition to the 32 million that will be paid to the Ghanaian victims, or the West African victims. So 168 million, they should have just gotten the money and paid the victims.
But you know what's also interesting? The government did say in around 2019 that Senegal also donated 50 million.
Well, I don't know about that. What I know is that the government gave us a check for $50 million.
And they said it came from Jammeh's assets.
Well, yes, that's what they said.
But Senegal also donated 50 million.
Well, I don't know about that.
Because it never came. But Senegal donated 50 million.
I don't know about that. I know we received 50 million and we spent it on interim operations. At the end of the day, we gave the victims what was left, and we recommended that the government pays the balance of 168, a little bit above 168 million, which could have been done. Honestly.
In 2019, you know, there was a timber confiscation by Gambia government, joint operation with Gambia and Senegal.
Right.
They sold the timber, and part of 100 million was due for Senegalese government, and Senegalese government told them to take the 50 million and give it to TRRC.
Well, we did not receive that.
Only the 50 million they sent to Senegal. But they did have the 50 million in Banjul. I don't know what they did with it.
Well, they certainly didn't say it to us. They did not
maybe you
think
have,
I stole it.
Maybe you have it in your bank account in the US. Anyway, I've kept you for too long, but so let's draw this to a conclusion. I kept saying that. I mean, because this is not the end. We will have you again to talk about a lot more things. Currently, I mean, we are having Jammeh and others. Jammeh is issuing audio. You did say earlier that Exile is very painful.
Oh, it is.
And I think it's also catching up to Jammeh.
Oh, yeah.
And he's releasing a lot of audios. What do you think is the reason for this?
Well, I don't want to speculate on the reason behind Jammeh's thinking.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would start running up and down the room just now.
Yeah.
But I know that it's not healthy for the Gambian people, the Gambian public, Gambian politics, and I'm glad that ECOWAS, according to President Barrow, has asked him to keep quiet. And I know he's going to keep quiet because he's a coward, as all tyrants are.
Yeah.
So I don't expect to hear another audio from Jammeh for some time now, because he would be afraid that they would send in troops to come pick him up.
But do you think that, I mean, two final questions. Do you think that if TRRC was taken very seriously by the government, do you think Jammeh would not have been a history now?
Well,
like Jamara was.
His history.
I know his history, but it's still very relevant in Gambian politics.
I think his influence would have been less. I think he would have been more alert to the determination of the government to deal with the crimes that he committed. But I think he senses a certain relaxed attitude from the government as far as the TRRC recommendations are concerned. Although they are doing well, compared to other countries, we are doing well in terms of transitional justice. But I think, yes, if the government had been more assertive, more thorough in its handling of the TRRC recommendation, Jammeh would have been more careful with his pronouncements, especially his pronouncements that he was going to come back in November by force, the human being. And
he would have switched position with you. Maybe you were going to run away, because Jammeh did say when he come, a lot of people are going to run away.
No, I won't run away. I'm not going to run away again from Gambia. It's too late. If I'm going to die, I will die here.
Yeah.
And that can come anytime. I've lived enough now. So if I die today, alhamdulillah, no worries. But the reality is that I think the government needs to be more firm in implementing the recommendations of the TRRC. It's like the country was sick.
Yeah.
Well, that is what a transitional justice does.
Yeah.
The country was sick. The commissions were created to diagnose the country and recommend treatments, and those recommendations are lying down. So implement the recommendations. And a lot of them don't cost a butut, or they cost very, very little money. Even if they cost 200 million, with all the money being squandered all over the place, they could have done that and let the country move forward. In addition to also making sure that Mr. Barrow doesn't steal our right to frequent an orderly change of leadership. That is just the reality. We have to be able to speak the truth to each other.
Yeah. So how did you receive Sana Manjang's arrest?
Well, I think I don't get excited over people's misfortune.
Yeah, but he born the independent, and he did many other things. I'm sure you should recognize him.
Well, of course, I recognized him. I didn't feel excited that he was arrested. I just thought, well, it's predictable. It's predictable. If people are doing bad things, eventually it's going to catch up with them. So when it catches up with them and he knew it was going to happen, you don't really get so surprised or excited about it. I think it was a positive thing. It was a good thing that he's in the net. He's going to face a trial. He's going to face justice. And others are also going to face the same thing. Because one thing about the TRRC recommendations is that Jammeh and his collaborators are found to have committed crimes against humanity.
Yeah.
And that has some very serious implications. It means that they could be tried under universal jurisdiction anywhere in the world. So it doesn't matter whether Sana Manjang is arrested here or whether Solo Bojang will be arrested there. You know, one day they will fall under universal jurisdiction. They will be tried for their crimes.
And you know something interesting, there are people in the Gambia here who, in some of the universal jurisdiction, some the claimants, some the perpetrators wanted them to come to the court and testify. They refused to go because they feared if they go, they too will be arrested.
Some of the
junglers and some of the NIA officials who are named to have committed torture and other disappearances and other things. Yeah.
In the Sana Manjang case.
Not in the Sana Manjang case, in previous universal jurisdiction cases.
Outside the country.
Yes, outside the country.
Yeah,
they are afraid of traveling because,
they could have been arrested, yes. They could have been arrested.
Yeah.
Unless they had a legal agreement with the authority that was inviting them, that they would not be arrested.
Yeah.
But if they stepped out of the country, they would be arrested and they would be tried. Yeah. It's not going to be slow, like here.
Yeah.
You would be accused, you would be charged and sent to jail.
It seems to be the case that the only thing for anybody indicted by the TRRC to be safe probably is to remain in the Gambia or to come back to power in Gambia.
Well, they are not going to come back to power. That I can assure you. It's like Mr. Barrow would say, Jammeh is history now.
Yeah.
And
Akumanza killing like a sort of banko kande. Akumanza killing like a sort of banko kan. And he's the president right now.
On the contrary, Gambia side.
we are coming to have 3 million now.
Yes, so 299 million Mansol Gambia. There's only one servant, and that's the president. The president is the servant of the people. The people are the Mansa.
Yes.
So
yes, I think so too. I think so.
So you should. There are consequences for people's actions. You cannot do anything you want to people, kill, torture, rape, and just think that you can come back as if if Jammeh left Equatorial Guinea today on a flight, maybe if he chartered plane then directly to Gambia, fine. But if he left Equatorial Guinea, the flight will stop, hopefully in Ghana. And if he stops in Ghana, he's going to be arrested there. There is no doubt about it. If he stops in another country, he could be arrested there. So the coming, it's easy to say I'm coming back, but the route that you will take to get to Gambia is something else.
And you have to be on a flight manifest anyway.
Exactly, you have to be on a flight manifest. The authorities on the ground would have to be supplied with that manifest, and they would see your name. So you land in Togo, you could be arrested. You land in Sierra Leone, you could be arrested. You land in Ghana, you could be arrested. And you will be arrested in Ghana.
And they can prosecute in local courts for the killing of their citizens.
Oh yes, under universal jurisdiction. Yes.
Even for killing of their citizens.
That's why he was going to be arrested in Ghana. So it's easy to say I'm coming back whether you like it or not. But these are not the days of military dictatorship or Jammeh dictatorship. So,
thank you so much, Dr. Galleh Jallow, for stepping by, and it's been an honor to have you here, and hopefully we'll have you another time soon. And so guys, this is Dr. Jallow's book. You can reach out to him to get a copy. It's an interesting collection of a lot of essays. It would make a very nice weekend read if you have it. At least it will give you a whole lot of perspectives of a lot of thoughts out there that were prevalent during Jammeh dictatorship, some of the things that were happening, activities that were happening, controversial issues even he mentioned. A lot of issues you mentioned in this book. And all the way to 2017 when the change happened. You will also learn about those things. And do you have anything lasting to say?
Well, one thing I would like to say is that the Gambians in general should learn to, we should know that the country can only progress through the practice and the politics of truth and honesty. Let us be true to ourselves and to our country. Let us be honest. We cannot. Those are non-negotiable things. If we develop a culture of lies and mimicry and fakery, we are just shooting ourselves in the foot. Let us try to be honest. Let us try to be respectful to each other, and let us try to be truthful at all points. We have to bring the culture, the political culture of truth and honesty in this country. That is our only salvation. So I hope and pray that all Gambians will follow that advice. Or, from a very humble nobody here. Yeah.
And a very old man now.
Yes, so are you going to be old too? The uncle culture.
I'm not yet.
Uncle Mustafa. Uncle. This culture where
when folks call me uncle, I said, no, I'm not an uncle.
No, you are an uncle. Everyone is an uncle in Gambia. Everyone is an uncle.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for being there, and join us next week for another episode. Do share this, subscribe, share the content for more likes and more education, and thank you. See you next week.
Thank you.